You know that moment when someone treats you like you're invisible, like you don't matter? Well, what happens when the tables turn in the most unexpected way possible? My sister told me not to embarrass the family at her company party. Little did she know, her boss was about to ask me for orders. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The invitation came on a Tuesday. Madison slid the cream-colored card across my kitchen counter with the enthusiasm of someone handling radioactive waste. "Corporate dinner," she announced, not looking me in the eye. "Marcus wants everyone to bring family members. I figured I'd ask you since Mom and Dad are in Europe." I picked up the invitation. Hartwell and Associates annual celebration. Black tie optional. The address was some fancy steakhouse downtown that I'd only seen from the outside. "Thanks for thinking of me," I said, though her tone suggested this wasn't her first choice. Madison adjusted her designer blazer, the kind that probably cost more than my rent. "Listen, Jake, I need you to understand something. This isn't just any dinner. These are important people. Partners, senior associates, major clients. Some of them are worth millions. Okay? I've worked really hard to build my reputation there. 5 years, Jake. 5 years of staying late, taking on impossible cases, proving myself over and over again." She paused, studying my worn jeans and faded t-shirt. "I just need you to blend in. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't tell those stories about your restaurant experiences. Don't mention that you're between jobs right now." The words stung more than I expected. Sure, I'd been laid off from the marketing agency 3 months ago, but I wasn't some charity case. "I know how to behave at a dinner, Madison." "I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying this crowd is different. They talk about things like merger acquisitions and international tax law. They vacation in the Hamptons and own boats." She grabbed her purse, checking her reflection in my toaster. "Just don't embarrass us, okay?" After she left, I sat there staring at the invitation. Don't embarrass us. Like I was some unpredictable element that might explode without warning. Like being unemployed meant I'd forgotten basic human decency. Saturday arrived faster than I wanted. I'd managed to borrow a decent suit for my neighbor Trevor. We were roughly the same size, and he worked in finance, so his wardrobe met Madison's apparent standards. The jacket was a little tight in the shoulders, but it would do. Hartwell and Associates had reserved the entire second floor of Romano's, an upscale steakhouse with dim lighting and leather everything, the kind of place where appetizers cost what I used to spend on groceries for a week. Madison met me at the hostess station, looking immaculate in a black cocktail dress that screamed expensive. "You clean up nice," she said, though I caught her checking my shoes. "Remember what we talked about? Blend in, don't embarrass the family legacy. Got it." The dining room buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. Men in perfectly tailored suits discussed golf handicaps, and women in designer dresses compared vacation homes. Madison guided me through the crowd, making introductions with the precision of a diplomat. "This is my brother Jake," she'd say, always with a slight hesitation before adding, "He's in marketing." Technically true, even if I wasn't currently marketing anything besides myself to potential employers. I shook hands with partners whose names I immediately forgot, smiled at associates who looked through me like I was transparent, and nodded along to conversations about golf handicaps and wine collections. Madison stayed close, monitoring my every word like a translator ready to intervene. Then I saw him. Robert Chen, the executive chef from Meridian, the restaurant where I'd worked as sous chef for 2 years before switching careers. He was standing near the bar, completely out of place in a borrowed waiter's uniform, holding a tray of appetizers with the same uncomfortable expression I probably wore. Our eyes met across the room, his face lit up with recognition, and he started making his way over, navigating through the crowd with practiced restaurant efficiency. Jake Martinez! What are the odds? Robert extended his hand, nearly dropping his tray in the process. What are you doing here, man? Family obligation, I said, acutely aware of Madison's sudden tension beside me. What about you? Don't tell me Meridian is catering this thing. He laughed. Hell no! The usual catering company canceled last minute. Some kitchen fire at their facility. Romano's was scrambling, so they called around looking for emergency help. I needed the cash, so here I am, pretending to be waitstaff for the night. Madison cleared her throat pointedly. Jake, we should probably... Madison, this is Robert Chen. Robert, my sister Madison.
Robert nodded politely. Nice to meet you. Your brother's one hell of a cook. You should have tasted his duck confit at Meridian. Pure artistry. I felt Madison stiffen. This wasn't part of her carefully controlled narrative. Her brother wasn't supposed to have a past that involved actual skills or professional recognition, even if it was just from a chef she'd never heard of. That's nice, Madison said with the fake smile she reserved for difficult clients. Jake, I think I see Mr. Hartwell by the windows. We should go say hello. But Robert wasn't finished. Seriously, this guy could have run his own kitchen if he'd wanted to. The way he handled that Mother's Day disaster when our prep cook called in sick and we had 300 covers booked? Legendary. You saved our asses that day, Jake. Before I could respond, Robert was called away by another server who needed help with something in the kitchen. He clapped me on the shoulder and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Madison and me standing in awkward silence. You worked in a restaurant? Madison's voice carried a note I couldn't quite identify. Surprise? Disappointment? You never mentioned that. You never asked. You've been so focused on what I shouldn't say that we never got around to what I actually do. Madison's perfectly applied makeup couldn't quite hide the flush creeping up her neck. Let's just go meet Mr. Hartwell, and please, don't bring up the restaurant thing. These people won't understand. We made our way across the room toward a distinguished man in his 60s who was holding court near the floor-to-ceiling windows. Charles Hartwell, founding partner, Madison's ultimate boss. She'd mentioned him countless times over the years, always with a mixture of reverence and terror. But as we approached, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Mr. Hartwell was gesturing animatedly at one of the servers, his face red with frustration. The server, a young woman who looked barely out of college, was nodding rapidly, clearly overwhelmed. The salmon is completely overcooked, Hartwell's voice sounded in his office commander voice. This is unacceptable. I specifically requested medium rare. This is practically jerky. The server apologized profusely, offering to have the kitchen prepare a new plate, but Hartwell waved her off dismissively. Don't bother. At this point, I've lost my appetite entirely. This is exactly the kind of incompetence that ruins an entire evening. Other guests had started to notice the commotion. Conversations quieted as people turned to watch the scene unfold. Madison grabbed my arm, her nails digging through the borrowed suit jacket. This is a disaster, Madison whispered, her grip tightening on my arm. He's going to think the entire evening is ruined. Do you know how much money his clients bring to the firm? The Peterson account alone is worth $2 million annually. I watched as the young server retreated toward the kitchen, shoulders hunched with embarrassment. Mr. Hartwell turned back to his conversation circle, but his irritation was palpable. The other guests seemed uncertain whether to acknowledge what had just happened or pretend they hadn't witnessed their host's public frustration. Maybe it's not that bad, I offered, though I could see the ripple effect starting. 2 other tables had begun examining their own plates more critically, and I noticed several guests flagging down servers with complaints of their own. Madison shook her head. You don't understand. Charles Hartwell is a perfectionist. He planned every detail of this evening months in advance. The wine selection, the menu, the seating arrangements, everything was supposed to be flawless. This kind of service failure reflects on him personally. As if summoned by her words, Hartwell approached our small group. Up close, he was more imposing than I had expected. Silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of powerful people. Madison, he said, his voice still carrying traces of annoyance. This catering situation is completely unacceptable. Of course, Mr. Hartwell, Madison replied smoothly. Everything has been wonderful. This is my brother Jake. Jake, this is Charles Hartwell, our founding partner. Hartwell extended his hand with the practiced courtesy of someone who met hundreds of people at events like this. Nice to meet you, Jake. What line of work are you in? I felt Madison's warning glance like a physical force. This was the moment she'd been dreading, the potential for embarrassment, for me to reveal something that didn't fit her carefully constructed professional image. Marketing, I said, sticking to her approved script. I work with brand development and customer engagement strategies.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Excellent. We use quite a bit of marketing expertise for our corporate clients. Which firm? The question I'd been hoping to avoid. Madison's fingernails were practically drawing blood through my jacket. I'm actually between positions right now, exploring new opportunities. Smart approach, Hartwell nodded. The marketing landscape changes so quickly these days. Better to be selective than to jump into the wrong situation. Before I could respond, another commotion erupted from the kitchen area. Through the swinging doors, I could hear raised voices and what sounded like pans clattering to the floor. The few servers who were still circulating began moving more urgently, their professional composure starting to crack. Robert Chen appeared at the kitchen doors, still in his borrowed uniform, but now with sauce stains down the front. He scanned the room frantically until his eyes landed on me. "Oh no," Madison muttered. "Not now." "Jake," Robert called out as he approached, completely oblivious to the fact that we were standing with the most important person in the room. "Thank God you're here. We have a serious problem." Mr. Hartwell turned his attention to Robert with the sharp focus of someone detecting a new crisis. "And you are Robert Chen, emergency kitchen staff for tonight. Sir, I hate to interrupt, but we have a situation that's about to get much worse. The head chef just walked out." "Walked out?" Hartwell's voice carried a dangerous edge. 10 minutes ago. Said he couldn't work under these conditions, that Romano's management was impossible to deal with, and that he wasn't going to ruin his reputation over one night. Robert ran a hand through his hair. "The thing is, we still have 40 entrees to prepare, and the remaining kitchen staff is completely overwhelmed. Most of them are prep cooks and dishwashers. Nobody else knows how to execute the menu." The blood drained from Madison's face. I could practically see her calculating the professional damage of being associated with this disaster. Around us, other guests had begun to notice that something was seriously wrong. Conversations grew quieter as people strained to overhear what was happening. Hartwell closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, his expression had shifted from annoyance to genuine concern. How long before people start complaining about delayed service? Honestly, it's already starting. I've got tables asking where their entrees are, and I have nothing to tell them. The kitchen is in complete chaos. I found myself studying the situation with a clarity that surprised me. This wasn't just about overcooked salmon anymore. This was about a room full of important people, some of whom had flown in from other cities for this event, facing the prospect of a completely ruined evening. I could see partners exchanging worried glances, clients checking their watches, and Madison looking like she wanted to disappear entirely. "What's the menu?" I heard myself asking. Robert blinked. "What?" "The entree menu. What are you supposed to be preparing?" "Jake," Madison hissed, "what are you doing?" But Robert was already answering. Herb-crusted rack of lamb, pan-seared halibut with lemon butter sauce, and filet mignon with red wine reduction, plus vegetarian options, roasted portobello with quinoa stuffing. I nodded slowly. These were dishes I knew, not identical to things I'd made at Meridian, but close enough. The techniques were familiar, the timing was manageable if you knew what you were doing. How many people are in the kitchen right now? Maybe 6, but like I said, mostly prep and dish staff. Why? Mr. Hartwell was watching this exchange with growing interest. "Jake, forgive me, but why are you asking about kitchen operations?" This was the moment Madison had been dreading all evening. The moment when her carefully constructed professional narrative would collide with reality. I could feel her willing me to stay silent, to stick to the marketing story, to not complicate her world with inconvenient truths.
But I thought about that young server who'd been humiliated over the salmon, about Robert who'd taken this job because he needed the money and was now facing a complete disaster through no fault of his own, about all these people who dressed up and made plans for what was supposed to be a celebration. Because I've run kitchens before, I said quietly. I know how to prepare these dishes and I know how to organize a kitchen crew under pressure.
The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Madison's face had gone completely white. Mr. Hartwell's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. Robert looked like someone had just thrown him a lifeline. "You're a chef?" Hartwell asked. "I was sous chef at Meridian for 2 years before I moved into marketing. I worked my way up from prep cook to running weekend services." I could feel Madison's mortification radiating beside me, but I pressed on. "I know it's unconventional, but if your kitchen crew can follow instructions, I might be able to help get these entrees out." Hartwell stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to reconcile this new information with his assumptions. Around us, the dining room continued its slow descent into restlessness as more guests began to notice the extended delays. "This is insane," Madison whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Even she could see that desperate times might call for desperate measures. Robert stepped forward. "Jake, if you're serious about this, we need to move now. Every minute we wait makes it harder to recover." Mr. Hartwell held up a hand. "Let me understand this correctly. You're suggesting that you, a dinner guest, go into the kitchen and attempt to salvage this evening?" "I'm suggesting that someone who knows what they're doing take charge before this turns into a complete disaster. Your choice, Mr. Hartwell, but right now you've got a room full of very important people, and in about 20 minutes, they're gonna start leaving." The weight of that reality seemed to settle over him. This wasn't about protocol anymore. This was about damage control on a massive scale. Hartwell's calculating gaze swept across the dining room, taking in the increasingly restless crowd. I could see him weighing options, none of them particularly appealing. Behind us, a table of what looked like major clients had begun making pointed comments about the service delays. "This is completely inappropriate," Madison finally found her voice. "Jake, you can't be serious. You're a guest here. You can't just disappear into the kitchen like some kind of what?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended. She fumbled for words. "Like hired help." The phrase hung in the air between us, and I saw something flicker across Hartwell's expression. It wasn't quite disapproving, but it was close. "Madison," he said quietly, "your brother is offering to solve a very serious problem. I'm not sure this is the time to worry about appearances." "But, Mr. Hartwell, what will people think? What will they say when they find out?" "They'll say that someone stepped up when it mattered," Hartwell interrupted. He turned back to me. "Jake, I have to ask, are you genuinely confident you can handle this? Because if we try this approach and it fails, we'll have made a bad situation catastrophic." I looked toward the kitchen doors where I could see servers emerging with increasingly panicked expressions. Through the small windows, I caught glimpses of the chaos inside. People moving without direction, plates sitting unfinished under heat lamps, the telltale signs of a kitchen in complete meltdown. "I can't guarantee perfection," I said honestly, "but I can guarantee organization. Right now, you don't have a functioning kitchen. In 15 minutes, you could." Robert nodded emphatically. "Mr. Hartwell, I've seen this guy work. He doesn't just cook, he runs systems. When things get crazy, he gets calmer." Hartwell checked his watch. "How long would you need?" "To get the first plates out? 25 minutes, maybe 30. To get everyone served, another 45 after that." "That's over an hour from now," Madison protested. "People will be furious. People will be furious if they don't get fed at all. At least this way, they get an explanation and a timeline." Hartwell made his decision with the swift authority that probably built his legal empire. "Do it. Robert, get him whatever he needs. I'll handle the dining room." "Wait." Madison grabbed my arm again. "You're really gonna do this? You're gonna abandon me here and go play chef?" Something in her tone finally pushed me over the edge. "Madison, I'm not playing anything. This is what I know how to do. This is what I'm actually good at, not the sanitized version you wanted me to present tonight. But these people want to eat dinner. Right now, that's more important than whatever image you think I'm supposed to project."
Before she could respond, I was following Robert toward the kitchen, leaving Madison standing frozen beside her boss. The dining room noise faded as we pushed through the swinging doors into complete pandemonium. The kitchen at Romano's was larger than I'd expected, but smaller than Meridian's. Industrial equipment lined the walls, but everything was in the wrong place for efficient service. 3 prep cooks stood around looking lost, while 2 dishwashers kept working as if nothing had happened. Partially prepared plates sat abandoned on the pass, and the smell of something burning drifted from one of the sauté stations. "Okay, everyone stop," I called out, loud enough to cut through the confusion, but not loud enough to sound panicked. "Stop what you're doing and look at me." The kitchen fell silent. 5 faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from confused to desperate. "I'm Jake Martinez. I'm going to be running this kitchen for the rest of the evening. I know this isn't how any of us plan to spend tonight, but we're going to make it work." I moved to the center of the workspace, scanning the setup. "First, what's your name?" I asked the oldest prep cook, a woman in her 40s with competent hands and alert eyes. "Carmen." "Carmen, you're my sous tonight. What's the ticket count?" 42 entrees still pending. We got 6 out before Chef Marcus left. I did quick math in my head. 42 plates, 4 different dishes, varying cooking times. Manageable, if everyone knew their role. "Robert, I need you to go back out there and buy us some time. Tell Mr. Hartwell that entrees will start coming out in exactly 30 minutes. Not 25, not 35, 30. Can you do that?" "On it." Robert disappeared back through the doors. I turned to the remaining crew. "What are your names and what can you do?" "Luis," said a young man who looked barely 20. "I'm mostly do prep, but I can work the grill." "Perfect. You're on all the filet mignons and lamb." "Carmen, you're handling the halibut. Pan-seared lemon butter sauce. I'll take the sauté station and coordinate everything else." I looked at the other 2 prep cooks. Names: Diana, Sam. "Diana, you're plating and garnishing. Sam, you're my runner, getting plates to the pass, keeping everyone stocked with what they need. Questions?" Carmen raised her hand tentatively. "The lemon butter sauce, do you have the recipe?" "I'm going to show you, but first we need to reset this entire workspace." I clapped my hands once, sharp and authoritative. "Everyone grab whatever you're working on and move it to that back counter. We're starting fresh." For the next 10 minutes, we transformed chaos into order. I reorganized the stations for maximum efficiency, positioning ingredients and tools where each person could reach them without interfering with anyone else. Carmen proved to be exactly what I had hoped she'd be: experienced enough to follow complex instructions, and confident enough to ask smart questions. "The lamb, how do you want the crust?" she asked while I showed her the proper technique for the halibut. "Herb and panko mixture, but we're going to sear it first, then finish in the oven." "Luis, show me how you're setting up the grill." Luis had already figured out the temperature zones I wanted, separating the fillets by doneness requests. The kid had good instincts. "Diana, your plating station, I want everything set up assembly line style. Warm plates, garnish components pre-portioned, sauce spoons at the ready." I moved between stations, adjusting setups, and making sure everyone understood their timing. The key is coordination. We don't send out any plates until we can send out entire table orders together. No one gets their food before their dinner companions. Sam nodded eagerly. He reminded me of myself at that age, desperate to prove he could handle more responsibility. 15 minutes until first service," I announced, checking the organized tickets I'd arranged by table number. "Carmen, start your first batch of halibut. Luis, get the first 6 fillets on the grill, medium rare. I want the lamb in the oven in 3 minutes." The kitchen hummed with purposeful energy. Everyone had a role, everyone knew what came next. For the first time since we'd walked in, the chaos had been replaced by something that felt like control. Then the door swung open, and Madison appeared. She looked completely out of place in her cocktail dress among the stainless steel and steam, but her expression was determined. "Jake, I need to talk to you." "Kinda busy right now, Madison."
"It'll just take a second." 30 seconds, I said, not looking away from the lamb I was searing. "Carmen, flip that halibut in 90 seconds. Madison stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Everyone out there is talking about this, about you taking over the kitchen. Some people think it's incredible, but others—" She paused. Others are saying it's completely unprofessional, that Hartwell should have called in a real catering company instead of letting a guest play at the restaurant. I glanced at her while adjusting the oven temperature. And what do you think? I think you're making me look like a fool. I spent 5 years building credibility in that firm, and now everyone's going to remember me as the lawyer whose brother had to rescue the dinner party. First plate's up in 8 minutes, I called to the team, then turned back to Madison. So you'd rather have 42 people go hungry than risk looking associated with manual labor? That's not what I said. Carmen, beautiful color on that halibut. Luis, how are we looking on the fillets? 3 minutes on the medium rares, 5 on the mediums, Luis replied without missing a beat. Madison grabbed my sleeve. Jake, I'm serious. People are starting to ask questions about why I never mentioned that my brother was a chef. They want to know what else I haven't told them about my family. I finally stopped what I was doing and looked at her directly. Madison, in about 7 minutes, I'm going to send out the first perfect plates this kitchen has produced all evening. In 40 minutes, everyone in that dining room is going to be fed, happy, and talking about what an amazing recovery this was. The question is, do you want to be part of that success story, or do you want to keep worrying about what people might think? Before she could answer, the doors burst open again, and Mr. Hartwell himself stepped into the kitchen. The final stretch of service moved like clockwork. Each wave of plates went out better than the last, and the feedback coming back from the dining room grew increasingly positive. Robert had started returning with specific compliments from different tables, and the servers who'd been panicked an hour ago were now moving with confident smiles. Last 6 plates, I announced, watching Luis manage the final fillets with the precision of someone who'd found his calling. Carmen, beautiful work all evening. Diana, your plating has been restaurant quality. As we assembled the final orders, I noticed the kitchen had attracted more observers. 2 servers had lingered to watch the coordination, and even the dishwashers had paused their work to see the conclusion of what had become an impromptu masterclass in crisis management. Table 28 ready, Diana announced, applying the last garnish with flourish. Service complete. The kitchen erupted in spontaneous applause. Carmen beamed with pride, Luis pumped his fist in the air, and Sam looked like he'd just won a championship. Even the dishwashers joined in, recognizing that they'd been part of something special. Outstanding work, everyone, I said, meaning every word. You pulled off something remarkable tonight. Carmen, you've got serious sauce skills. Luis, I've worked with grill cooks who couldn't manage temperatures half as well as you did. Diana, your plating elevated every single dish. Hartwell stepped forward, and the kitchen fell quiet. I want to echo Jake's sentiments. What I witnessed here tonight was exceptional performance under extreme pressure. Each of you should be proud of what you accomplished. He paused, his gaze settling on me. Jake, I'd like to speak with you privately when you have a moment. Madison's face had gone through several emotional transformations during the final service. I'd watched her cycle from mortification to confusion to something that looked almost like pride. Now, hearing Hartwell's request for a private conversation, she looked genuinely nervous. Give me 5 minutes to help clean up the worst of this mess. Nonsense. Chef, you go talk to Mr. Hartwell. We've got this covered. There was that word again, chef. Coming from Carmen, who had mastered techniques in one evening that usually took weeks to perfect, it carried even more weight. Hartwell led Madison and me to a quiet corner of the main dining room, where the atmosphere had completely transformed from the tense scene we had left an hour ago. Conversations flowed freely, wine glasses were being refilled, and the overall energy felt celebratory rather than disastrous. Jake, I've been in business for 35 years. I've seen every kind of crisis management you can imagine. Hostile takeovers, regulatory investigations, class action lawsuits that threaten to destroy entire companies. He gestured toward the kitchen. What you accomplished in there ranks among the most impressive displays of leadership under pressure I've ever witnessed, not just because you solved an immediate problem, but because of how you solved it. Madison shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Hartwell, I think you might be overstating. I'm not overstating anything, Hartwell interrupted gently. Madison, Your brother demonstrated executive-level competencies tonight: strategic thinking, rapid decision-making, team building, and flawless execution under extreme time pressure. I found myself studying the dining room, watching satisfied guests enjoying their perfectly prepared meals, trying to process what Hartwell was suggesting. It was just kitchen management, nothing more complicated than that. Kitchen management that saved an evening that was critical to our firm's client relationships, Hartwell replied. Do you have any idea what would have happened if this dinner had failed completely? The Peterson Group alone represents millions in annual revenue. The Yamamoto contract we're negotiating could be worth $50 million over 5 years. The numbers made Madison sit up straighter. These weren't abstract business relationships anymore. These were specific accounts with specific values that I'd helped protect. Jake, Hartwell continued, I want to offer you a position with our firm. The words hung in the air like something tangible. Madison's face went completely blank. Around us, the dining room continued its normal rhythm, but I felt like time had stopped. A position doing what? I managed to ask. Operations management, initially. We handle complex corporate restructuring cases that require someone who can see systems, identify inefficiencies, and coordinate multiple teams towards specific outcomes. Hartwell leaned forward. What you did tonight, taking a chaotic situation and organizing it into smooth, efficient operation, that's exactly what our corporate clients need when they're facing major transitions. Madison found her voice. Mr. Hartwell, Jake doesn't have legal experience. He doesn't have business school credentials. He's never worked in corporate consulting. He doesn't need legal experience for what I'm proposing. He needs operational expertise, which he clearly possesses. He needs leadership skills, which he demonstrated tonight. And he needs the ability to think clearly under pressure, which speaks for itself. I looked between them, trying to reconcile this conversation with everything I'd assumed about my professional prospects. 3 months ago, I'd been laid off from a marketing job I'd never really loved. Tonight, I was being offered a position at one of the city's most prestigious law firms by a man who'd seen me work for exactly 90 minutes. What kind of timeline are we talking about? I heard myself asking. We have a major client presentation next Friday. Consolidated Manufacturing is considering a complete operational overhaul of their East Coast facilities. They need someone who can analyze current systems and propose efficiency improvements. Hartwell's eyes held mine steadily. I'd like you to lead that analysis. Next Friday? That's 6 days away. 6 days to prepare a presentation that could influence a $100 million decision? Are you interested? The question was direct, immediate, and completely life-changing. I glanced at Madison, who looked like she was watching her understanding of reality reorganize itself in real time. Mr. Hartwell, she said carefully, are you seriously offering my brother a consulting position based on one evening of kitchen work? I'm offering your brother a consulting position based on demonstrating the exact skills our clients pay premium rates to access. Hartwell's tone carried no uncertainty. Madison, Jake would obviously want to review the specific terms, compensation package, and role expectations. But I'm prepared to make an offer that reflects the value I believe you'd bring to our operations. Before I could respond, Robert appeared at our table with the same energetic approach that he'd brought to every interaction tonight. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should know the Romano's general manager just arrived. He wants to meet whoever ran the kitchen tonight. Apparently, he's never seen service recovery like that in 15 years in the restaurant business. Hartwell smiled. It seems word is spreading about your performance, Jake. I looked around the dining room one more time, at the satisfied guests, the smooth service, the successful evening that had emerged from complete disaster. Then I looked at Madison, whose professional world had just been turned upside down by her unemployed brother. Mr. Hartwell, I said, making a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable, I'd like to hear more about that offer.
The next few minutes felt surreal. Hartwell excused himself to handle what he called necessary conversations with other partners, leaving Madison and me alone at the table. The dining room continued around us, but everything felt different now, charged with possibilities I hadn't imagined when I'd put on Trevor's borrowed suit earlier that evening. Jake, Madison said quietly, her voice carrying none of its earlier authority, I owe you an apology.
You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. She twisted her wine glass between her fingers, not meeting my eyes. I spent this entire evening treating you like an embarrassment waiting to happen, like you were some kind of liability I had to manage. Before I could respond, Robert returned with Romano's general manager in tow, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who carried herself with the confident bearing of someone who'd built her career solving impossible problems. Mr. Martinez? She extended her hand. I'm Angela Foster, general manager here at Romano's. I wanted to personally thank you for what you did tonight. Just help out where I can, I replied, shaking her hand. You did considerably more than that. Angela's smile was genuine. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone organize a kitchen crew efficiently under those circumstances. What's your background? Sous chef at Meridian for 2 years, then moved into marketing. Meridian? I know that kitchen. Competitive environment, high standards. Angela nodded approvingly. Listen, I know this might seem presumptuous, but would you be interested in consulting work? We're opening 2 new locations next year, and we need someone who understands both kitchen operations and business systems. I felt Madison's surprised intake of breath beside me. In the span of 20 minutes, I'd gone from unemployed to fielding multiple job offers. That's very flattering, but I may have just accepted a position with Mr. Hartwell's firm. Of course, but if that doesn't work out, or if you're ever interested in restaurant consulting, here's my card. Angela handed me an elegantly designed business card. What you accomplished tonight, that's exactly the kind of operational thinking our industry needs more of. After Angela left, Madison stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. How did this happen? How did one evening change everything so completely? It didn't change anything, Madison. This is who I've always been. You just never bothered to look. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but they needed to be said. Madison flinched slightly, then nodded slowly. You're right. I was so focused on what I thought success looked like that I couldn't see actual competence when it was right in front of me. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I kept thinking about what people would say about my family, but I never thought about what my family was actually capable of. Hartwell returned to our table, accompanied by an older woman I recognized from Madison's descriptions as senior partner Catherine Walsh. Madison immediately straightened, shifting into her professional demeanor. Jake, Hartwell said, I'd like you to meet Catherine Walsh, our senior partner. Catherine, this is Jake Martinez, the operational expert I was telling you about. Catherine extended her hand with the measured grace of someone accustomed to evaluating people quickly and accurately. Charles has been singing your praises for the last 10 minutes. Apparently, you single-handedly rescued our client's dinner. I had excellent support from the kitchen staff. Deflecting credit while acknowledging team contributions. Interesting approach. Catherine's eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who'd spent decades reading people. Charles tells me you're interested in operational consulting. I'm interested in hearing more about what that would involve. Consolidated manufacturing, for starters. They're hemorrhaging money due to operational inefficiencies across their East Coast facilities. Traditional consulting firms have provided theoretical solutions that don't translate to practical implementation. She paused. What would you do with a manufacturing facility that's running at 60% efficiency despite having state-of-the-art equipment? The question was clearly a test, but it was the kind of systems problem I understood intuitively. I'd start by observing actual workflow, not reviewing documentation. Walk the floor, talk to the people doing the work, identify where theoretical processes break down in practice, and then map the disconnect between what's supposed to happen and what actually happens. Usually, it's not equipment problems, it's coordination problems. People working at cross purposes because they don't understand how their piece fits into the larger operation.
Catherine exchanged a meaningful look with Hartwell. Charles, I think we should have Jake review the consolidated materials tonight. If he's going to lead the presentation Friday, he'll need to understand their specific challenges. My head was spinning. Lead the presentation to a client worth potentially hundreds of millions? I appreciate the confidence, but shouldn't someone with more experience? Experience with what? Catherine interrupted. Traditional business consulting that hasn't solved their problem? Jake, they've had 3 different consulting firms analyze their operations over the past 2 years. All highly credentialed, all expensive, all unsuccessful. What makes you think I'd be different? Because you don't think like a consultant, Hartwell answered. You think like someone who has to make systems work in real time. Tonight proved that. Madison had been unusually quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Mr. Hartwell, Ms. Walsh, I have to ask, are you really prepared to put Jake in front of a major client based on one evening? Madison, Catherine said gently, your brother demonstrated tonight that he can assess a crisis situation, organize resources, coordinate a team, and deliver results under extreme pressure. That's exactly what consolidated manufacturing needs. But the presentation skills, the client relationship management, can be developed, Hartwell finished. The operational insight he demonstrated tonight, that can't be taught. I found myself looking around the dining room again, taking in the scene that had transformed so completely from the chaos we'd encountered earlier. Guests were lingering over dessert and coffee, servers moved with relaxed efficiency, and the overall atmosphere felt celebratory. It struck me that this was what success actually looked like, not the theoretical metrics Madison had always focused on, but real problems solved and real value created. If I took this position, I said carefully, what would the timeline look like? Intensive, Catherine admitted. 3 days to review Consolidated's materials and develop your analysis, Thursday to prepare the presentation, Friday morning to deliver it to their executive team. And after Friday? If the presentation goes well, you'd likely spend the next 6 months implementing whatever recommendations they accept. If it goes very well, you'd become our go-to person for operational consulting with a client base that could keep you busy for years. The scope of what they were describing was breathtaking. 6 months ago, I'd been planning weekend specials and managing inventory at Meridian. Now, I was being offered the chance to influence $100 million business decisions. What's the compensation structure? I asked, feeling slightly mercenary but needing to understand the practical implications. Hartwell smiled. Starting salary would be comparable to a senior associate level, with performance bonuses tied to client outcomes. For the consolidated project specifically, if your recommendations result in measurable efficiency improvements, you'd receive a percentage of the savings achieved. Madison's eyes widened. Senior associate salary at Hartwell and Associates was significantly more than she'd made in her first 3 years at the firm. I have one condition, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. What's that? Catherine asked. I want to bring Carmen Rodriguez onto the consulting team. The woman from tonight's kitchen? She demonstrated exceptional ability to learn complex processes quickly and execute them flawlessly under pressure. Plus, she asked exactly the right questions at exactly the right times. I thought about how Carmen had mastered the halibut technique and improved on it throughout the evening. If we're going to be analyzing manufacturing operations, we need people who understand how processes actually work at the ground level. Hartwell and Catherine exchanged another look. That's unconventional, Catherine said slowly. So was putting a dinner guest in charge of kitchen operations, but it worked. Fair point. Catherine extended her hand. Jake, welcome to Hartwell and Associates. We'll have contracts ready for review by Monday morning. As we shook hands, I noticed Madison watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe, mixed with something that looked like bewilderment. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and introductions. Partners I'd never met came over to thank me for saving the dinner. Clients who had enjoyed their meals made a point of complimenting the recovery. By the time we left Romano's, I had business cards from 6 companies interested in operational consulting. Outside the restaurant, Madison and I walked to our cars in comfortable silence. The night air was cool, and downtown was quieter than usual for a Saturday.
Jake, Madison said as we reached her BMW, I want you to know that what happened tonight changed how I think about a lot of things. Such as?
such as what success actually looks like, such as the difference between credentials and competence, such as what our family is actually capable of when we're not trying to fit into someone else's definition of acceptable. She unlocked her car, then paused with her hand on the door handle. I spent 5 years trying to build a reputation based on what I thought people wanted to see. You built a better reputation in 90 minutes by just being excellent at what you do. Madison, you are excellent at what you do. You've always been excellent. You just forgot that excellence stands on its own. I told you not to embarrass us tonight, she said quietly. Turns out, you made us proud instead. As I drove home through the empty streets, I thought about the unexpected turns that had brought me to this moment. 3 months of unemployment had felt like failure, but maybe it had actually been preparation. Time to reconnect with who I really was and what I was genuinely good at. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Dude, the Romano staff is still talking about tonight. You're a legend. Also, Angela wants to set up a meeting about consulting work. This could be huge. Another text, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Jake, this is Carmen from tonight. Mr. Hartwell got my number from the staffing company. I wanted to thank you for recommending me for the consulting position. I can't believe this is happening. Also, I've been thinking about modifications to that lemon butter sauce technique. Call me Monday? I smiled, thinking about Monday morning and the materials I'd be reviewing for consolidated manufacturing. 3 days to understand their operations, develop recommendations, and prepare a presentation that could change the trajectory of my entire career. The borrowed suit felt different now. Not like a costume I was wearing to play a role, but like the professional attire of someone who'd found his actual calling. Tomorrow, I'd go shopping for suits of my own. Suits for a consultant who understood that real solutions came from understanding real problems and that the best credentials were the results you could deliver. My sister had been worried about embarrassing the family. Instead, we'd both discovered what our family was actually capable of when we stopped trying to be something we weren't and started being excellent at what we were. The highway stretched ahead, leading back to a life that was about to become completely different from anything I'd planned. But for the first time in months, different felt like exactly where I wanted to be. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.